If you were asked to list the best sellers of all time, you'd probably say publications like the Bible, Shakespeare, maybe even Barbara Cartland's romantic novels, but I bet you wouldn't consider that little book that's tucked away in your car glove compartment or your desk drawer. It's also carried around by flat hunters and tourists and referred to with embarrassment by lost taxi drivers. Have you guessed? Yes, it's the Old Faithful, the A to Z. Now, if you haven't heard the story of how this innocent little book was born, you haven't lived. But Phyllis Pearsall has. She's the lady who walked the streets of London 50 years ago to save the rest of us having to do the same. Phyllis, what made you do it? Was there nothing on the go then to tell us where to go?
There was nothing on the go that had any time. Everything that had been done since 1919 wasn't on it, or everything that was there and had disappeared also was on it. And losing my own way, I then found out nothing in 1935 had been brought up to date since 1919, including the Ordnance Survey. So I thought, well, I'm losing my way. I still do, by the way. You probably do too. I might try and see whether I can produce one.
But hang on, what was your experience before? I mean, can I be rude? How old were you then?
I was exactly 30. I was an artist and a writer, and doing perfectly well at that. But I suddenly thought, no, I think we need a map of London. And I didn't realise it was complicated. It was just like that yardarm on the ship. Yeah. I didn't realise it was complicated, so I went in deep end.
Well, if you go in at the deep end, what the dickens do you do? You got the maps from the Ordnance Survey. I mean,
yes.
Did you actually have to then tramp round
Well,
London?
not all of them. I had to tramp round a great many, but some of the local authorities had the information they needed for the drains and all that kind of thing. And they were kind enough, they let me go with my ordnance sheets and then draw them there, all the changes that had taken place.
But
that
you
was
still had
lovely.
to walk round and spot your changes then?
Well, then I went round because there were quite a lot of queries. So I'd go round and spot those, but there were several local authorities who wouldn't let me in, naturally, because here was a woman with nothing to show for herself anyway. And there I had to walk the streets in order to correct them from the streets. Lost my way. I'm sure I made a lot of errors because I'd go up one street, then I'd see, do I go to the left or the right or the right or... You try it anyway, and you'll find that, you know, it's disaster. So anyway, I did it the best I could, and some of the local authorities were inefficient, so those I had to do. So I walked that. Then I gave myself another trouble of re-walking them, the main roads, to get the house numbers.
How many streets are we talking about?
23,000 streets in the first A to Z. Now it's 45,000. In the present one that you've got there, it's 45,000
Now, you've got the old one there.
Here's the very first copy.
The first A to Z?
Yes.
Atlas, and it's falling to bits now,
And
isn't
1
it?
shilling.
A bob.
But it's nearly dust, actually.
What are you charging for it now?
Much more.
£2.95. It's not a bad comparison, though, is it? £2.95.
Not over all those years.
No, I don't reckon.
So anyway, there I was trying this. Then I had to index it. I didn't know anything about indexing, and I put the alphabetical orders as far as I could. That's why I called it A to Z, because I had to do it in alphabetical. And then I put them in shoe boxes. But the shoe box with the TRs fell out of the window. I was in High Holborn at the time. Yes, it was disastrous. The traffic lights were at red in High Holborn. I tore down the stairs, 4 flights. They were still at red. Swept off all the cards from the boots, bonnets and roofs of cars, but I couldn't sweep them off the bus. So the buses, when the lights changed, went sweeping through with, sadly enough, Trafalgar Square. So the first copy didn't have Trafalgar Square. Now it does, because the proofreader, when he did the proofs, he found it for me.
Now, what happened during the war? Because they took all the signposts down and everything. What happened to
Not only did they take all the signposts, they stopped us publishing anything large scale, and I'd got big printers and paper bills, and I didn't like having bills. But as a young student in Paris, I don't know why, well, I do know why, I used to go into a library to get dry and warm, and also to dry my smalls and my shoes if they'd got wet, because I hadn't any money.
Is this when you were little?
This is when I was 14, 15, 16. And there I was in this library, and why I don't know, but I knew German, and I read the German High Command apologia for losing the First World War. So when I saw war coming, I had my draftsmen draw further north. They blamed the whole thing that they'd started at Belgium instead of in Norway. Yeah. So I drew Norway and Denmark and all these things down. And so we suddenly came out with this large series of war maps, and they sold very well.
So you started doing that, so you were able to sort of keep yourself going?
I was able to, yes.
Now, it's been going for 50 years now.
Yes.
I mean, you're 80 now.
Yes, 83.
83?
And a half. Yes.
You,
Sorry, yeah, the half.
well, I mean, indelicate, I thought.
You're very
Now,
delicate.
you could have made a mint, a fortune,
Yes.
but you ploughed it all back in for your people who
Ploughed it all in and then formed a trust. Nearly 25 years ago. We've got to think of some celebration when it's the 25th year for everybody.
Why did you do that when you could have had a wonderful...
Because it's much nicer to have a lot of happy people rewarded for what they do. Far nicer than, what do I want money for?
Well, I'll tell you what,
Yes.
it's a very nice Hermes scarf.
Yes.
And there's a nice little Gucci case, so you don't mind enjoying it a bit.
This is when I'm representing the company. When I have to do them proud, because they're all watching us now, and I have to do them proud. But if you saw me painting, you wouldn't know that I enjoyed anything.
But in those early days of having done it, you must have had to be very persuasive to get people to take on this young lady walking down the streets and never into flog 'em a map.
Yes. In fact, I had in Birmingham the only ever success when I first produced a map. And that was, I went into a shop and they turned down the A to Z Birmingham. And I was just going to go out with my copies when one of their clients said, oh, I want 6 of those. And we never had any trouble in Birmingham. But in London, I couldn't sell 1 copy. So I walked the streets of London again. There's a funny lot down there. But in any case, I had to walk the whole streets trying to sell it.
What's the next project?
The next project I never give away. They're all working hard at it in the drawing office, and I'm not allowed to tell. They say I'm the worst one for telling.
We wish you well with it, Phyllis. It's been a pleasure to meet you. Ladies and gentlemen, Phyllis Pearsall. Thank you very much. Well, that's my job.